Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 7. It's called Rules of Acquisition. So, spoilers for the episode as always. And I appreciate now, having watched the episode, that it's also a play on Rules of Attraction, because there's a romantic element. I thought that was quite good. So, very good. Nice, witty, multiple layered pun of a title. I appreciate it.
I also appreciate that you can't tell going in that it's already a pun.
No, I agree, because it sounds fine on its own, just as it's about the Ferengis, whole thing.
Well, it worked perfectly. It already had us excited for the episode just based off of that, and then it has a double meaning, even better.
Yeah. So, yeah, this episode we got the Grand Nagus back. Zek, he's back in town, and he's trying to woo one Kira, which led to a lot of comedy, I think, in this episode. Very enjoyable. But the main plot is that he wants Quark to basically facilitate some negotiations with an alien race from the Gamma Quadrant. This is them trying to, kind of what they've been doing for like a whole season and a bit now, is try to get their foot in the Gamma Quadrant so that they've got the not the exclusive, but the head start in like dealing in trade in that quadrant, and hopefully lots of gold press platinum. But the other side of it is that there's this new Ferengi character around who kind of is getting in between Quark and his brother Rom, and there's a bit of a twist with this character. It feels like they're getting involved, they're helping out Quark. I think early on you're like, oh, they're up to something. There's something, like they're going to turn out to be a villain because they're being too nice. They're too nice for a Ferengi. And then there's a reveal about halfway through the episode that this is actually a female Ferengi, and
who may or may not have fallen in love with Quark.
Who might have fallen in love with Quark. But actually, again, talking about hindsight, the opening scene of this episode was so good in hindsight once that reveal came, because the opening scene is them playing their Ferengi poker style game, and Dax is there, and they start talking about how Ferengi treat women, and there's a lot of opinion shared in that scene. So in hindsight, when it got to the reveal that this Ferengi character was a woman, it actually was like, oh, they set so much of this up thematically in that opening scene, and I felt it very rewarding as the way it was written.
It was a really natural way of giving us that exposition. Okay, we could probably assume most of these things about the Ferengi anyway, and I'm sure we've been told some of it before.
That's in pieces, yeah.
Yeah, but on the opposite, especially if this is just, you happen to catch this episode randomly, here's everything you need to know right in that opening scene.
Yeah, and even if you have, it's always nice to have a summary of something that's thematically important for the story you're about to tell. Yeah. And, Dax's whole role in this episode is that through their many lives, right, up until this current Dax, is that there's been a lot of encounters with Ferengi, and yes, they're scandalous little misogynistic cretins, right? They're kind of awful, but they're also kind of fun as long as you know how to, like, be around them. And that kind of sets us up ideas, like, because Kira's, who's getting all these unwanted advances from Nagus, is like, hey, like, how do you put up with this? Like, what are you talking about? How can you see anything in these creatures? And she's like, they've got their own thing. And it's just setting up the idea that someone could be finding attraction, and that kind of leads in naturally to, oh, wait, this character's got attractions towards Quark. And hell, there's even a couple
that makes sense when it's another Ferengi.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And there's even like a couple of moments where Quark, before he even knows the truth, there's like a couple of like just little moments where he's caught in a moment of like, they're being really nice, and he's caught off guard, and it's almost like he's starting to feel something for this other character before he even knows that it's a potential romantic interest. So
yeah, I think one of the rules of acquisition was something along the lines of never put personal relationships in front of profit. It's very clear.
We hear a number of them, not all 350 or whatever they said there was, but
well, that's we don't know if that's all of them. That's just the highest one we hear. Could be 500.
No, to be fair, I do think she says at one point, I've learned all 350. I think she says that line. So I think we have again, that's not the exact number she said. It was 300 and something, but
yeah,
something in that range. So yeah, so this character is Pell. And it led to a lot of comedy as well with, I think, Quark's brother. Like, there's a couple of scenes where Quark's brother is trying to like convince him of something. One in particular where he's saying, "Hey, the Nagus wants you to go negotiate this." Oh, That's interesting. And then Pell comes in and gives some advice of like, hey, yeah, maybe he's setting you up to be the fall guy. If this goes wrong, then he can blame you and it's not his fault. And then Rom's like, yes, maybe you need someone to watch your back, brother. And he's like, yes. And he gets closer. Maybe you need someone you can trust. Yes. He's like, someone like me. No. Hey, Pell, come over here.
It's just, it's so perfectly played.
Yeah.
Because you know from the moment the joke starts where it's going, but it still lands.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of it, is that you've set these characters up enough at this point that you can see where some of the jokes are going to go, but if anything, it just makes them funnier, because you're just, like, waiting to see Rom be put down. You're waiting to see the disappointment on his face, and that's what makes it entertaining.
He's going to just snap at some point.
Well, he already tried to have his brother killed, and then...
Oh, no, I mean really snap.
Okay.
Because he came straight back after that.
That's true. I mean, actually, Quark was impressed that he tried to do that for profit, so he respected him just a little bit more after that. It's not really materialized into much from the relationship, but it was there. So, yeah. Also, so the aliens that come in to negotiate with Quark, the main one's played by Brian Thompson. Do you recognize him from anything, Connor?
I didn't. I dread to think what you're going to say right now.
He was in a Stallone movie called Cobra.
I've not seen it.
He was also in 2 episodes of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer as different characters, no less.
I knew this is where this was going.
So we had Principal Snyder negotiating with the judge, or I don't remember his name, but he's also the vampire in the first 2 episodes of the show.
Wow, you don't remember his name? Some fan you are.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I think it was Luke. Luke sounds right. I think it was Luke. But yeah, the judge is easy to remember.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, Judge was the big blue guy that the rocket launcher was needed for in season 2. Anyway, so you've got Principal Snyder. Interestingly, though, because of the types of characters that he played, they never shared a scene together because Principal Snyder wouldn't be interacting with the demon. So,
well, they lasted that long anyway.
No, of course not. But it's just fun. This is like a little pre-Buffy reunion, if that makes sense.
Yes, a pre-reunion.
A pre-reunion. Is that a word?
Yes. I don't think it is, but sure, why not?
In the context of this, it makes sense. So, yeah. Honestly, these aliens are probably the weakest part of the episode, just because, like, obviously Star Trek, they have to design so many alien races, but I felt kind of like, we'll just slap a couple things together for this one. It was like, here's some red and white face paint, and we'll give them like a nice mesh over their head, and we'll call it a day.
I'm not gonna lie, I watched this episode 3 days ago.
And
I'm already struggling to recall what they look like exactly.
I think that's that just makes my point for me. Yeah. They're just forgettable. It's like what have we got lying around? That's what they'll.
Yeah, like they were fine while watching. They weren't like distractingly bad or anything like that. But they were not a memorable design. Let's be fair.
But yeah, it doesn't go well. It seems like Inegas is trying to like set Quark up for failure because he keeps upping how many. Oh, what was it? Because they said it like a lot in the scene. They brought it up the berries they want so they can make wine out of it and
Tula berries.
Tula berries, yeah. They kept like, that's a lot of Tula berries. There was a lot of Tula berry talk.
There was a lot of Tula berry. I want some Tula berry wine. I bet it's good.
But yeah, he keeps upping the amount, and then obviously Brian Thompson's like, no, like we don't even want to give you 10,000. So when Quark, we don't even get this happens off camera, but we see Quark be told to ask for 100,000 vats of these Tula berries, and instead he just kind of comes crawling back, being like, yeah, they just immediately left as soon as we asked for that. They're not entertaining it.
But Pell's like, I know, it's all right. We're gonna go there and we're gonna make them give it to us.
And, well, that's the big thing. Pell, from the start of the episode, keeps jumping in to help Quark, and that's why I was saying earlier that it seems suspicious at first, because you think, oh, is he trying to set him up? But of course, once we get the reveal, and we sort of recognize that she's actually trying to like help him because she likes him, and that she's sort of infatuated with him, it's like, okay, this adds like a different context, and it also flies in the face of everything they said about Ferengi females at the start of the episode. You know, like, they said, they just hang around the house naked and they're not allowed to leave or do anything or achieve anything. And here she is, knowing the rules of acquisition, furthering all of these little things for Quark and making smart plays. Obviously, it's going to come crashing down because they won't accept, that she's a woman once it happens, which does lead to maybe the biggest laugh I got in the episode is when she rips off her ears in front of the Grand Nagus and he just yells out, "A female!" Like, that made me laugh.
That's good. I think my biggest laugh is a few minutes later.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's when Quark throws back the ignorance is no excuse for stupidity line, and the Nagus is like, yeah, okay, fine, you win. They got me.
Yeah. It's interesting that Quark, it feels very realistic in how he reacts to a few things in this episode, because there's a moment before he even knows that Pell is a woman where they're at the planet with the other aliens and she kind of gets carried away having a toast with them, and she sort of gets on top and kisses him, and he's kind of awkward about it, and then they get interrupted. But when they're back on the ship going home, I actually kind of like that every time she tries to like talk about it and bring it up and sort of explain like what's going on, he just doesn't. He's just like
nothing happened. There was no incident.
He's suppressing the memory. He doesn't want to talk about it. And well, it's kind of like touching into kind of more serious psychological, like how do we like process stuff like this territory. It felt realistic because of that, because it felt like the way he's just denying it happened feels like how I think a lot of like masculine dudes might try and just like say, "Oh, it didn't happen." If they thought another guy had kissed them, they just be like, "No, nothing happened. We'll never talk about it again. Let's just go with our lives. No, there's no incident," and just do that. So it felt natural. It felt, given all the faults that we know Quark and the other Ferengi have, it felt like the right sort of way to play it.
I think it's worth noting for all the amount that played up to be kind of terrible people, which they mostly are. They still feel real while doing that. They aren't just a caricature.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean that's kind of the broad strokes of the main plot. Ultimately, Rom, Quark's brother, does break into a room while they're away and finds the fake ears, because the female Ferengi have smaller earlobes, and that's the big sort of signifier. And wants to tell Quark this, and that's also a funny scene because he's trying to tell Quark while Quark's talking to the Nagus, and Quark keeps shooing him away. And that's also makes for just that's just like a funny pacing thing more than anything else. The way he keeps coming in and getting shown away. But it kind of boils down, I think, to if like it's definitely more of a comedy episode rather than saying big things, even though it is kind of touching on bigger ideas with its central themes. But I think the most it ever really feels like it's kind of making kind of a, one of those sort of tough, more poignant moments that Deep Space Nine is capable of, the way it handles its stories, is at the end where Quark seemingly is attracted to her, and he does seemingly like her, and even sticks up for her by standing up to the Grand Nagus, which is something that we maybe never could have seen him doing before. Not that he's doing it solely to protect her, it's more about protecting himself as well, but it still kind of feels like he steps in front of her, he makes some big plays. At the end of the episode, she asks him, like, "Come away with me. Like, no, like, we can just go to the Gamma Quadrant. No one cares in the Gamma Quadrant if I'm wearing clothes and, like, treated as equal as you." And Quark kind of sadly says, "It still matters to me," which is saying that for even though he's maybe progressed a little bit in this episode, he's still not given up any of those views and values, and ultimately can't go forward with this in any way. Even though when she kisses him and strokes his earlobe, he still gets all like, "Oh, like I'm feeling things," kind of thing. So I thought that was like a nice way to be like, okay, maybe there was a little progress there, but he's still very much Quark. He's still very much a Ferengi, and all of that conditioning is not just going to go away after one little quick story.
It's very much. I don't mean this in a negative way, even though it might sound it. Neat TV writing of having a little bit of progression, but making sure everything's still pretty much recognizable by the end of the episode as to where we started for the next one. So, when you get to the next one, it's still pretty much the same place, give or take. It's a little shift here or there at a time. Yeah.
I mean, this show's already shown that there is progression with the characters over time, so I kind of trust that if there is more progression like this. In fact, one of the little moments that was kind of nice, there's not a lot of Odo in this episode, but there's a quick scene where Odo's in the bar. It's when Quark and Pell are away, and Rom's just running the bar, and Rom starts asking some theoretical or hypothetical questions, I should say, to Odo about, like, you know, if you thought something bad was happening to your brother or someone was becoming between you and your brother, would you do something? And there's just a little moment where Odo goes, well, I don't have any siblings, but if I did have one, even pathetic little, I can't remember the exact line he uses, but like the pathetic little, you know, pissant like Quark. And he sort of gets thoughtful and goes, yes, I suppose I would do anything to stop him, anything from becoming between us. And it's almost like he catches himself actually thinking positively about his connection to Quark in a weird way, and sort of gets uncomfortable and leaves the scene. And I kind of like that, because they have kind of this weird friendship almost.
They do. I'm really enjoying their stuff.
Yeah, so I appreciate that as well. Other than that, I mean, it is a lot of comedy. It's the Grand Nagus, like, pinching Kira's ass and Kira threatening him and him trying to give her gifts and all the rest of it.
And Dax being like, hey, no, this is a good thing. This is just what they're like. Don't just go along with it.
I don't think she said it was a good thing per se, but yeah.
No, but she's like, he likes you, you know. She's like taking it in a good way.
I don't know. I think I might have enjoyed her punching him. Although I did like the line where she brings the gift back, says she can't accept it, and Nagus is like, does this mean a passionate night of wild lovemaking is out of the question? She's like, yeah, that's what it means. Yeah.
Worth a try.
So yeah, I like, it was definitely an entertaining episode. It's a lot of Quark. Quark is very funny. He's very, because he's got this sort of moral, like, that's really sort of, I don't know, questionable morality, I guess we'll call it. It's very funny to see how he responds to certain things, and because they're so well defined at this point, that seeing him playing off the others is quite good. But it also fleshes out the Ferengi, because, you know, much like a lot of the characters in this episode, because Dax says this, we've never seen a female Ferengi, I don't think.
No, I'd remember, because I'd have different ears.
Yeah, so the idea that the first time we see one...
I mean, they even say they're usually confined to staying on the planet.
Yeah, they do say that. But the first time we ever see one is one who's trying to basically pull a... I'm sure there's some old movies I could compare this to, but, you know, pull the I'm going to dress as a man to sort of get ahead in the world because they won't accept me as a woman.
I think one of the most famous ones is probably Mulan.
I think it was further back than that, but yeah.
It does, but yeah. I just mean in terms of recognizable as a story trope.
I think it's interesting to do that with the Ferengi, because since the start of this show, it's been made very clear how they treat their women. And I think sort of the first time we ever see, because we could have like had a scene in the Ferengi homeworld where they go there and there's just tons of Ferengi women like standing around, and that would be the first time we see them in their sort of place of servitude or whatever you want to call it. I think the first time we ever seen one being one who's trying to break through that glass ceiling, for lack of a better term, is quite an interesting way of doing it, because instantly we're kind of rooting for her in a way that we maybe wouldn't just, you know, all the ones that are happy to be, you know, and it makes you question, how many Ferengi women feel this way? How many of them feel that they're being held down and feel the inequality and want to break through? And it suddenly makes the Ferengi as a race have this like question that maybe this can evolve over time, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. Like, you know, I think she mentioned at one point that they're not even supposed to be allowed to read. I think was one of the things. It's
very Handmaid's Tale, that actually.
Yeah. Like, they're not allowed to be taught like to read, I think was one of the things she mentions. So yeah, it's definitely they have a lot of values on the Ferengi homeworld that I'm sure a lot of the women are not that into.
Values is definitely one word for it.
Yeah.
Although we do have to talk about something else in this episode that comes up, and it's not actually that big a deal in this episode. I just kind of know from osmosis it is a big deal.
Yeah, I was getting to that. I was, you know, gonna bring it up in a minute. Didn't.
And that's the word Dominion.
Yeah.
I know that Dominion's an important thing.
I know more than I would like to, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're the same.
Yeah, I know a bit more than I would like to. I don't know, obviously, a lot of specifics by any means, but I just know that Dominion's a big deal, and the first time we ever hear about it is this episode. Basically, the alien says, hey, like, we can't get you 100,000, but... And this is not Brian Thompson, this is the woman that was with him, who comes and speaks to Quark and says, hey, but I could probably set you up with someone from the Dominion who could. So that's the first time we hear of it, and it's sort of sold as kind of a big deal later, because Nagus is like, wait, you've heard, you can get me in touch with someone from the Dominion. They're apparently the power that runs the Gamma Quadrant. They're the ones that are like the most sought after kind of thing. It's
played as if this was the plan the whole time: is keep pushing and get that, that contact. Get, who cares about these aliens? They're the small fish. We want the sharks. That was definitely the vibes it was getting.
So interesting that this came up for the first time here. Looking to see how they develop that. It is worth mentioning that while Quark is promised a percentage of every single transaction with the Gamma Quadrant because he set up this meeting, that's taken away at the end for the whole Pell.
Keeping quiet about Pell.
Yeah. Or even just being tricked by Pell. Like, you didn't notice this, Quark. How dare you? Like, you get nothing. So, yeah, it means that Quark's still going to be on the bar on the station where we like him being, but
he gets to keep his bar, which at one point I think he was trying to have that taken away from him.
Yeah, so it's very interesting and challenging, I think, for the writers to develop a character like Quark because of how the Ferengi are. But if they can give layers to this character, then it's a goddamn
it is. It's such a fine line because you got to make him likable, but you can't go. You don't want to go too far that he's just an out and out good person, because that takes away too much from what he's supposed to be as this kind of scummy little Ferengi.
Yeah,
it's tricky to get that balance in act for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, it's not like an all-timer episode by any means, but I think that opening scene with like some of the Ferengi being offended that a woman, Dax in this case, like winning the poker game, and it's not poker, it's like Tonga, I think they called it, or Tongo maybe.
Not poker.
Not poker. Well, I mean, there was two different types of cards though, because they were holding circular cards, but they were picking up square cards from like the set in the center spun around. So there was definitely stuff going on here that was a bit more complicated, but.
I would love to know if they even thought about if there was a game or a rule set, or if they just went, here's some cards.
Well, there also seemed to be like a rock, paper, scissors element, because they also said something when they played their hand, and it was like offense or like acquire or something. There was like 3 or 4 different things, and based on what you said, it kind of maybe indicated what type of hand you had, and that's what indicated who won. Like, I mean, I don't know how well they thought this through, but they seem to be mixing poker, a little bit of roulette, and rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, and somehow it will be about acquiring everything because it's a Ferengi game.
Of course, yes. Yeah, I don't know what Dax, a Starfleet officer, is going to do with all that gold press latinum, but fair enough. Yeah.
Then at the bar,
probably. Yeah, give me some of those holosuites, Quark.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for Quark. If he's the only place that can be spent on the station, pretty much.
I mean, there's other shops there. We've seen a few.
Yeah, I wonder. Obviously, all these shops have to operate in gold press latinum. Does that mean the Federation covers the cost for all the Starfleet officers who are working there? Is there like a kitty for them for the other currencies?
I would assume so. As much as the Federation is a post-capitalist society, we've told before, they interact with other species that do have currency. Ferengi being a great example. So they must have currency to trade.
Yeah,
and therefore they must have like some sort of stipend in place for the employees to spend, at the promenade.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. So few people in the Federation would need it though that it's probably relatively cheap for them to just give them a big hunk of it and say, "Hey, that's
like, here's your daily allowance."
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Or maybe they just keep some receipts, bring it back, and well, I suppose they wouldn't have any currency on them to spend anything if they don't have anything to begin with. But you know what I mean.
Yeah. Maybe they just transfer a big block into the station. Cisco just deals it out to all the shops and be like, "Look, this will cover everything. Don't worry about it."
Maybe the officers themselves don't have to actually do any transactions. It's just it's paid behind the bar. Like they're it's all.
We'll sell the tab.
Okay. Just, these are the weird questions that come up. Time goes on. All right, there you go. That's another Deep Space Nine. Enjoyable episode, I would say. We'll see what's coming. So we'll be back to Next Generation, of course, on the next review. But when we come back to Deep Space Nine, we'll be looking at an episode called Necessary Evil, which sounds like a good title, given the sort of morals and like ethics that this show can get into. So here's the description on IMDb. Odo relives some terrible and tragic memories of a past investigation when he was a constable on the Cardassian-occupied Deep Space Nine, then named Terek Nor. Okay, that sounds interesting, actually.
Flashback-heavy episode.
Yeah. Maybe even entirely, I don't know.
Could be, yeah.
But we love some Odo, and seeing how the station was run when the Cardassians were in charge, which we've not actually seen yet. Obviously, we've heard lots of stories about them being in charge, so that could be a big lore episode as well in that sense.
Yeah, it could be. Be really interesting to see just the differences, and I hope they do some set redesign, like some of the subtle things. Obviously, we've seen some changes over the last season and a bit. I wonder if we'll see a lot of that reverted, a lot of really cold, harsh things.
Oh, I don't know. We'll see. But that's next time. So let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments. Like, subscribe, all the usual things. Helps us out a bunch if you do. And you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep the lights on. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek. And Odo pretty much was a puddle in this episode because he wasn't really around.